share whatever you feel comfortable with.
All right, everybody, welcome to the 401 show. It's Thursday, May 2nd. We've got a special show tonight. We're kind of breaking our theme of digging into what's into space, and we're going to start kind of digging into what's going on in our bodies, because something is going on in this country that's a little bit off the charts. And we've got some special guests here with whom we're going to discuss this. So we've got Charles Coleman, but you go by Chuck.
That is correct.
Correct. And Vilma, yes?
Yes.
Okay, Chuck, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you here? Pretend you're telling me for the first time. And you're really going to kind of lead the show today because you have an expertise in this episode, which we're calling the opioid crisis, which I didn't even realize what a big deal it is.
It's one of those situations to where, our society doesn't give us a lot of information because, as everyone know who's a little bit familiar with, this crisis that we have, it's the pharmaceutical industry that, benefits from this quite substantially. So I'm a photographer by trade. I'm an individual who translates emotions into pictures and images. I try to answer the dreams that people have in their heads. And about 3 years ago, this young lady reached out to me on Facebook, and she said she was following me for about 3 years, a year. And
Is this the Russian model I would have seen an interview of?
no, this is the one sitting right next to me.
Okay. Which would make her
Yay.
a Lithuanian
I'm
model.
excited.
Yeah,
Vilma's
yeah,
from
yeah.
Lithuania. We're going to get to her in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get to her in a minute. I'm kind of going to get to her now. I basically seen the movie where the individual was on the street corner, with a elastic around his wrist, and I always thought that individual... The cliche.
Right.
That individual was, he chose to be there. And it was all his fault, and everyone kind of looked down upon that individual. So she came to me. I had no idea of that issue, what it was about, just the cliche. She came to me. 2 days later, she went into opioid withdrawals. So after she went through opioid withdrawals, my main concern at that point was to get her well enough to get her back on the plane because I thought she was a junkie. And I didn't want anything like that around me. So day 2, 3 a.m.
Now, this woman, she is someone. How did she find you again? She saw your movie, or is this someone you were a model? You were a photographer.
I've been a photographer for a little over 35 years, and I have kind of a steampunk, edgy Rembrandt style of imagery. So, my photography style is based off a woman's perception of what she feels, she sees in fantasies. Whenever your wife, girlfriend, significant other goes to the store to purchase something, she runs this movie in her head of how she would like to be once she purchases those earrings, shirt, watch, whatever the case may be. She runs this movie through her head. So she's always constantly in this state of fantasy and reality at all times. So I take my imagery and I make that reality come to it.
I saw a bunch of your pictures. I see it.
So women take a look at that. So she stopped me for approximately a year.
On Facebook.
On Facebook. And then she finally...
And I'm the one facing... Never mind.
So she came to me, through Facebook we met, we talked, and at that time I was 2 years single out of a 20-year relationship. So my whole thing was trying to find out exactly who I was and how come I couldn't hold a relationship forever, even though that was 20 years. So I wanted to kind of find myself, try to figure out what women,
20, I'm still trying to find one that gets over 5.
I guess I'm a little ahead of you. But so we talked on the phone, kind of fell in love over the phone. She said, okay, I'm going to do one of your photo shoots. And I'm thinking, all these women kind of say they're in love, but all I know they really just want the photo shoot and they're gone. So I put her in the same category. She just liked my images. She was just going to come in and go. She bought a one-way ticket. And I was like, what do you mean a one-way ticket? She says, when are you going home? I don't know. We'll see. And she jumped on, she jumped on a plane, $875 for a one-way ticket. She came to Savannah, Georgia. I picked her up at the airport, and I'm not going to go through the smaller details there, but day 2, she went into opioid withdrawals. And I was like, wow, no wonder, she came in. She was.
Is this your first exposure
this
to?
First exposure to her and opioids, except for what I've seen on television. So,
now wait, Bill, this is you that we're talking about right now?
Yeah, and
okay.
yeah.
I'm slow to the game here. I'm now picking this up.
I
Okay.
was married to this Russian guy. He was super abusive, beat me all the time, broke my back. I had 2 failed back surgeries. Was put on pain medication. When I met him, I was about 20 years in the addiction on the pain pills, and couldn't get out of it by myself. That was my last hope. I'm like, I don't know, there was something in my gut that said you have to reach out. So that was it. I went to him on day 1. I told him, I said, I don't have enough pills. I'm going to go into withdrawals. This is what's going to happen to me. This is what you can expect. When I go into seizures, don't call an ambulance. On day 2 at midnight, please call an ambulance. And you can take over from
Well, I've heard relationships that begin with a medical emergency are often long-lasting and strong.
They
Isn't that
can
right,
be
Sydney Gray?
a bonding moment, to say the least.
That's a story
Bonding
we'll
was
save
a-
for later.
yeah,
But this is an
the
incredible way to
bonding-
kick off.
Well, bonding was the last thing on my mind at this point. I was thinking of, how can I get her well enough to get her back on the plane? Because where I was staying, I was leasing a house that we had models from all over the world in there on couches, sleeping. And here comes the paramedics at 3 a.m. in the morning, stepping over people and pulling this woman out. I'm like, oh my God, what are they thinking? They're like, is this a halfway house or something? What do you have going on here? And they start questioning me, what's going on? So that's the kind of attention that I did not want to have. But she went there at 3 a.m. and I'm thinking, in the back of my mind, okay.
Went there, do you mean hospital?
She went to the emergency room.
Okay.
Right. So I'm thinking that, okay, they're gonna make her better. They're gonna, detox her there, and then she's gonna come home, 2 weeks later. So she went, and I kind of washed my hands clean. 7 a.m. she gives me a call and says, okay, pick me up. That was quick. She, there's nothing that they can do. She was so thin, they couldn't give her an IV on her neck. They couldn't find a vein.
Finding a vein?
They
Okay.
couldn't find a vein with her. So here I am with an individual that I am thinking that's going to die in my hands, So to make a long story short, I asked the nurse, what can I do? She said, she's just a junkie. She's going to die. And something clicked in my head.
That's cold. But in a sense, if you work on those front lines, I could understand it. It's like soldiers not wanting to get to know the new guys that show up at the front. But
if the people that I look to for advice and information tell me there's nothing that can be done, now I'm confused. Now the inquisitive part of my brain kicks in, and I'm thinking, okay, what can I do now? So I started researching, and the first place that I looked was her. She had been in this world for 20 years. She knew more than the paramedics. She knew more than the doctors. She knew all about the brain cells and how it functions, what works, what does not work. Marijuana could help all of that information. So I started listening to her.
no, wait, Vilma, did you learn this via experience, or did you study your own
Both.
addiction while you
Both.
were in the middle of it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, I have been.
So
in
get a little closer
rehabs.
to the mic, just
And
in
yes,
case.
I have been in rehabs enough to learn a lot about the medical industry and how it works and how opioids hijack the brain and how the medical industry steal your lives.
Well, you're talking to a show that deals with conspiracies, so you're not going to say
I heard.
anything surprising here. And
Okay.
don't know the details of their operations, but the health and medical industry
Obviously.
is definitely, it's one of the institutions that
Mm-hmm.
helps control humanity, that our position is
Mm.
ultimately puppeteered by a grand puppet master.
I love the spiritual vibe you're giving out. It's
Well, we,
really-
at the end of the day, this is, I don't know if you guys are Bible believers, but
No.
I did not believe in the Bible until I was 42 years old. And then
So I
something.
have 2 years to go.
All right. Well, my timeline is not everyone else's timeline. I mean, sometimes it happens a lot faster, or sometimes it never happens, to be honest with you.
It looks good on you, though.
There's no doubt in my mind that book is true. Like, I will now die for that. Which, to say this today at the age of 50, when a mere 8 years ago I was a man pursuing the pleasures of this world, that the fantasy of the world which you photograph. What do we got, Jimmy? Everything okay? Sounds good. Okay, so where was I going with this?
So
The
this-
Bible, yeah.
Oh, so this show, we call it an Ephesians 5:11 show, because Ephesians 5:11 says, uncover the unfruitful deeds of darkness instead of expose them instead of participate in them. So what's going on in the drug industry, without a doubt, this is not an accidental human nature, just finding the path of least resistance. We are being led along, and the drug companies are very, very important players in this. But that's a strategic bird's eye view of the problem. I'm fascinated by what's it like on the front lines, and
that's basically what I, did. I wanted to know more about it. How come I didn't know? This young lady, she didn't look like an individual who would, choose to go down that path. Now, I'm wanting to know the psyche. I'm wanting to dissect all this and figure out what's going on. So I was working for this magazine at the time, and I don't want to give the name of the magazine, but the owner of the magazine gave us some really good information on that particular subject. And he talked about mule receptors and the hypothalamus gland. And I was like, what the heck is all this stuff? So I started researching that, and then I started calling around clinics to, interview them on, what do you guys do? What do you look for? How can you help me understand to go ahead and put other people in a position that I was not in, to have the information to say, okay. So
Vilma, maybe you don't believe there's a God, but if
I
there
don't have enough
is,
facts to know either way. I mean, not just what I believe, from what I know, from what I've seen, from what I've heard.
no, I was gonna say, if there is one, he sent him. Like, this is.
don't
You know
say
what?
It. Don't you say
No,
it.
now
call
you
him
have
that
to.
every morning and every night. Oh God. I'm sorry. I have no filter. I don't mean to embarrass
Oh
you
no,
guys.
then we're gonna get along just beautifully, because I have no filter yet.
Good.
In fact, it's gotten us in a little trouble in the past. So anyway,
But she, what I started doing then is I started going around to different clinics to try to figure out how this works. So I don't want to give a plug for any pharmaceutical company, but Suboxone was the one that did it for her. Basically what that does, it takes that urge of getting the high away, and it blocks the need to go ahead and take that opioid, which is
cravings.
the craving, away. So now what that did is that gave us some time to go ahead and get her healthy, get her appetite back into place. And I had no idea what morphine, what fentanyl, oxycodone,
I've
ketamine.
heard the word
You know-
fentanyl is the most dangerous thing I've ever seen.
It's, and all these are a byproduct of heroin. And it's so easy. A grandmother, we went to this one clinic, a grandmother, 75 years old. She breaks her hip. She goes to the doctor. They put rods in her leg. They fix her up, and they give her Vicodin. She goes home. She takes Vicodin for X amount of,
Gets hooked.
days.
Like Brett
and
Favre.
Then the doctor says, hey, I think that's enough, and he takes her off. Now she's sitting in the corner going through withdrawals, because it controls your appetite, it controls your body regulations, it gives you these flu-like symptoms, it controls your sex drive, it controls all of that. So if the brain is now hijacked by this substance that replaces the brain's normal functionality, that secretes these hormones and these natural chemicals, what happens now, the pharmaceutical company now owns your appetite, your sex drive, your decision-making process. They own all of that. That's what that drug does. Because if you hit your hand with a hammer, what happens is that you don't feel that pain right away. Your brain takes over at this point, but it doesn't have enough to actually sustain that for any length of time. So what happens at that point, then it starts hurting, and if it gets too bad, then you go into shock. What these pills do, it tricks the brain to say, okay, we're still creating that, so I don't have to create this anymore. So when you get off the drug, what happens at that point, the body starts going, oh, wait a second. We're not used to making that anymore. We haven't made that for a while. And that's why it takes you, about 4 weeks to your brain to kind of pick back up, to even, to be
Get back to an
Functional,
equilibrium.
somewhat.
functional. It takes you years because it tears up the white matter in the brain. The white matter in the brain is the one that actually controls your signaling. So even when you get off of that, those signal paths are already broken up. So some people take 1 year, 2 year, 5 years to really, things like appetite. We're driving on the street or on the highway, and we were going up this big mountain. She says, I have never seen anything like that before in my life. She breaks down in tears, and she's like, wow, she's never paid attention to that stuff before. It's always, who am I going to meet? I'm almost out of my drug. I need this right now, or else I'm not going to function. Her whole life is about that. So we go around, and we started going to these clinics, and they're talking to us, and they're telling us about, what to look for. And it's like, when I hear of parents kicking their kids out on the street because they're not, the parents say, if you don't quit that, I'm going to, whatever consequence they want to give.
Yeah, the tough love in that case. I don't know if that.
But the problem is that the brain is broken at this point. It's broken. They don't have a choice. And if an individual goes to the doctor and gets an abscess tooth pulled, they give them Vicodin. If they get hooked or anything like this and they lose their insurance, the only thing that can cure that now is heroin. So that gateway drug that everyone talks about, marijuana, has nothing to really do with it. It has everything to do with the pharmaceutical heroin that they give us. And then if you lose that connection to the pill, the only thing that can make you function and get up in the morning and go to work is heroin at this point.
We wear it on our sleeves here because I've flirted with a few addictions in my life. Nothing bad. In fact, one of them was marijuana, which it was December 4th of 2015. I remember the day I got power over it. I've smoked it since then, but it used to rule my life. And a few others very similar to, hydrocodone situations where doctor prescribed it for a temporary pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember filling the extra prescription, and now I was kind of taking it kind of for fun, but even within a short 30 to 60 days, I was already needing it just to feel normal.
But did you like the feeling it give you?
Loved it.
Yeah.
I did.
Not
And-
everybody gets that. He doesn't get
I
that,
don't
so
get
he
it.
would never get hooked. But people who get hooked, they love the feeling.
And I think that's something that's, I don't know if that's genetic,
It
exactly
is,
what it is.
It is.
But I've always been very amorous towards booze and
It's
liquor
an
and
too.
addictive personality.
It is, yeah.
Things
without
that make
a
you feel
doubt.
good.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And one of my personal struggles with Christianity is obeying God's rules. And, we're so used to the world. And if God weren't in the picture, I probably wouldn't make a point of trying to keep that stuff at arm's length from me. I just wouldn't care so much. But it is the devil. Like, I've seen what it can do just on a short term. And I had someone very close to me, and I believe it was Suboxone. I'm not going to mention this person's name. Got addicted to Vicodin, essentially.
Mhm.
And it was bad. And she ended up taking a medication that the doctor gave her, which it imitated
Mhm.
the opioid.
Mm-hmm.
And it just killed her desire to want to take
It's
Yep.
usually methadone
And it
or
seemed
Suboxone.
to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the motivation come to do so much research on behalf of someone that's a virtual stranger to you?
I love the question as well. The motivation. My whole life is based on trying to view the world from the female's perspective. So anything that she has, any concern that she has, I have a natural interest towards it. I've been studying this for over 35 years, and I spent
This being the female mindset?
the
Okay.
female mindset. And
I've been studying it for 50, and
Well, you know,
I still don't even know what I am dealing
we all
with.
we all take different
We
classes.
need a whole different show, like
Yeah.
how to talk to. Okay,
Well,
go ahead.
we take different classes, I'm sure, but mine started over in Europe. I spent years in Germany, and learning another language, you know, it sounds cool.
Stationed with the military, or were you?
I
over there?
started off with the military, but got out and stayed there because I loved it so much. The girls treated me quite well over there, so that was my reasoning for staying. But I got a lot more out of Europe, you know, so far as, you know, education on life and myself. You know, it was just beyond belief what I learned, because speaking another language, you know, I'm used to thinking in English. I dream in English. I think in English. And so when I'm having a real debate or an emotional conversation, I think in English and translate everything over into German. But what happened with that is that, you know, people started saying, you know, you're missing something there, you know. So I had this girlfriend there. We were talking, and she says, Chuck, you know, America has only had 200 years of translating words or emotions into words. English comes from the Germanic language, so we have a lot more windshield time explaining things, emotions, where you don't. So why don't you really start listening to us? That was the most difficult thing for me to do, is start listening to others, paying attention to others. It's a very difficult thing over when you cross that water and come back here. We're already thinking up of a rebuttal. If you're having a debate, you're already thinking of something else. You really don't hear that other person.
That's one of my biggest complaint about conversation is people usually aren't really sharing ideas. They're just waiting to give theirs, and they're not really listening. It's a cliche, but the best conversationalists do listen. Just sit back.
It's so true, because they have this saying there that, you know, if you know, this is my movie, you're playing a sub role. When I finish, I will listen to your movie. The word that the respondee has to say, or by culture, please proceed. And they look and they talk about his subject before the other person interjects what he has to say. We don't do that here. Her and I, we don't do it. But what that did for me over there is it made me actually start thinking about, instead of looking at what somebody's saying, understand the word behind what brought those words out, because you're trying to translate an emotion. So when a person says, I'm empowered, what caused that? Is it really that they are empowered, or is it they're trying to convince me and others that they are? I found out that they're just really trying to convince someone else that they're empowered.
Almost all the time. Because if you
I
really
wanna
are
give somebody-
empowered, you don't walk around saying
you
it.
don't
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
say it. So now I'm in a world where people are not really communicating, because this person wants me to have a conversation about I'm empowered, but how do you have a conversation and you know that person really doesn't believe it? So I got to sit up there and nod and say yes, and I'm just like, you know, I'm ready to leave this conversation, because this person is not going to be able to handle the truth. Because I get a woman who loves my work. She wants to get involved in my work. She sees her girlfriend down the street or her sister or whatever, and she loves it. She absolutely loves it. So I'll wait until they say something on Facebook, and I'll hit them up in the background, and I'll say, hey, I see you like that. Oh, that's great. But it's good for my girlfriend, not me. Why? Well, I don't know what people would really think if I did that. I'm like, well, you love this, but you're not going to reward yourself with something so innocent as a photo shoot because you're afraid of what other people think. But when I see you on Facebook, you're giving advice to other people about empowerment. That's what's wrong with our world today. You know, they take these words and they live by these words that are not true. They paint these images of a movie inside their head that they're playing this leading role, and they're really not.
You'd fit on this show very well. I mean, you are you're really nailing down the crux of our problem, and it is at the end of the day, it's a communication problem. And we have definitions and banners that are meant to describe and quantify everything that comes across our conversations, and it's lacking. I too had, I was born in another country myself. My family's from Colombia, and there's something about watching the United States from outside the United States, because the world doesn't revolve around the USA as much as Americans would like to think.
No.
And we're not the great guys we think we are. I mean, we are an imperial. There's some things going on in this nation that are, I don't think our founding fathers would have been happy about. But the point is when I started looking at this a few nights ago, and specifically talking about fentanyl and what it is doing to the byline of today's show, I think was called "Why Our Coroner's Office is Going Nuts." And you always, we are desensitized to hearing about the next SARS, the next medical scare. Mm-hmm. But this one is actually, this is really overburdening not every coroner, but in these little pockets where the fentanyl craze has picked up, it's like an entire town will die within 6 months. Mm-hmm. And the coroner just, what used to be 5 or 10% of his, clientele is like that county in Ohio that's leading the nation. I forgot the name of it. He's got 70% of his people coming through there are fentanyl overdose deaths. This just became one of the biggest killers in the USA. And it's not even on the news. Like I was blown away when I couldn't believe it.
3 years ago, it wasn't on the news. I knew nothing about it. We're doing an episode in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we interviewed this coroner's office. They had 2 refrigerated tractor trailers out back to keep up with the deaths because they didn't have enough space to take care of all the overdoses.
Yeah, there was another. They were talking to a number of, law enforcement officials. Very similar story. I'm just going to synthesize all of them into one comment from a hypothetical guy meant to represent all of them, which is basically like, in 2010, 2011, when fentanyl kind of started to show up on the scene, they were getting 4 or 5 calls a month for a fentanyl overdose. Flash forward a mere 5 years. This is nothing. It's nothing. And he's like, now we're getting 4 or 5 calls a day. Our big days are 10 days. This whole city's just dying. Like, it's incredible. But,
Here's what we're doing. Vilma is a walking plethora of information in regards to this sickness. And so we've been doing a lot of studying how to get her out of this and what brought her out of it. We've visited clinics across the United States, and they all kind of say the same thing. Get out of your environment, fall in love with yourself. Get out of your environment, fall in love with yourself. You got to get away from everything that,
Now, when you say environment, are you really talking people, or are you talking about they need to
Places,
move to a new
people,
address?
everything.
Right,
Your
every
scenery.
aspect
Everything you're
of it.
For
used
symbolic
to.
purposes, or
No, for healing purposes.
okay,
For healing purposes, because the human being, we're used to, we like a certain place. We like to get up,
It's
get a coffee,
routine. It's all bad
Yeah.
habit.
everything that reminds you of where you're going,
and it'll be everywhere.
and it'll be everywhere. So one thing that what really got to me is they said that an individual is an addict before they even take a substance, because people, I want to be careful with this, people who are addicted to things are really influenced by their surroundings. And the definition.
So sorry, click on it, babe. Just click on it.
you might need to reignite
I'm so
the
sorry,
camera.
guys.
Oh, no
Yeah.
worries.
Everyone is the individual that is susceptible to this is actually
Sort of like predisposed to it.
Here's the definition of love is no fear. You cannot have fear and fall in love. Because if you fear, you set forth a false representative of who you are. So this false representative goes out to the world and meets people. Because you're scared, you don't want to give up any information, so you start pretending you're this other person, and then people fall in love with that person. What happens then, you kind of get tired of people treating you in a way, this feels weird. It feels weird because
That's
they
not
fell
who
in
you
love.
are.
That's how you presented yourself.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that you get to a point to where you're like, okay, I'm ready to open up now, but the people you open up to are like, this is not what I signed up for, well, this is who I am. Either you accept me how I am, and just this big, huge, thing of confusion there. So what happens with most people who have this addictive personality, you will find relationship issue problems. You will find it, very difficult to fit in because you're really trying to fit in.
I think you just diagnosed all my life problems, Doc. Nice.
No, but that's what happened. So when she started going around with me, her whole life she went to a different environment. I go to New York Fashion Week. I have people from all around the world flying in, asking me for my work. That's how I met this young lady here. 2 years ago, we had a conversation, and what did I tell you?
He told me.
Don't join any conspiracy shows.
No,
that would be a bad idea.
I reached out to him like out of desperation too in that moment, kind of like in an abusive situation at the same time. I didn't even tell him that, but it's kind of just funny how patterns work.
It's funny,
so
like
I
he
wanted
just-
to address it, you know. And I reached out to him, and I was controlled in that environment, even in that moment, speaking to him. But I took the risk and snuck away to have that conversation.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I was so desperate for that that I did that. And, there was probably some questioning at that time, and I just told him I needed to do it for work, But he held me back from kind of following up with Chuck at that time. But Chuck basically told me, you're just kind of in this hamster wheel, you know what I'm saying? Like your market's all wrong, and like you have talent, but you're I know exactly where you're at, and it's like you're not going to get anywhere with yourself this way. He was basically saying that I was marketing myself to these like thirsty men that had no money. You know what I'm
You'd
saying?
almost think that you and I spoke before, but I've had the exact same thought about. But that's a whole nother conversation.
He tried to reach out to me about a year ago. So Hoops reached out to me a year ago, and our conversation was 2 years ago, and both times I was kind of trapped, but it had progressed and gotten worse by the time I had talked to you.
Now,
By the time I talked to you, I was homeless and like physically on the road, like I had nowhere to be. I was just kind of
Now, when you say
working to
it got
survive.
worse, are we talking about the toxic relationship you were in? Are we talking about a dependency on pills, which led to you? Give us a little background on what it is we're talking about here.
The relationship and my life circumstances. I have always had my own place. I've never had to like live under somebody else's like rule, so to speak, except when I was like, in my parents' house. But my parents always told me not to ask them for anything. So as soon as I got old enough to leave, I did. So that was an abusive environment as it was that I had to leave from, quote unquote, but then I just went to another one because that's all I knew. It took me a good 10 years to figure out, this is what I'm doing. I'm used to this. This is my comfort zone, quote unquote, is like this place of fear instead of love. And I'm actually uncomfortable with love. And that's why, ultimately I reached out to him. It's, I was in this cycle of repeatedly getting abused, but I was warranting it. And I had to purge that from my life just like she did. I keep seeing you. I'm sorry. I'm like so emotional, and I keep seeing her, and it makes me emotional. I probably knew I was gonna cry in the show. It's so personal. It's just it really is. It's like a disease when it gets hold of you, whether it's through the drugs or like through the abuse. It's like the same mindset that we're put in with the same chemicals. And
Is this something
I've
that's
lost
common
my life,
to? I want to get back to this story. Is this something that's big in modeling, or does it attract a certain?
Absolutely.
85 to 90% of the people who reach out to me, I understand why they're reaching out to me. They're looking. They're searching for happiness.
Something real.
85 to 90%.
Wholeness. Oh my God, that's
Oh, wait.
I can't
They
help it.
all
I
have
can't
an addiction
deal with
issue.
it
Every last one. That's what our show brought to me. So, in order, and now this is kind of like my life mission now, is to figure out how to bring them out. What kind of silver, shiny object can I place in front of these women to get them outside of that comfort zone just a little bit to see that there's something else out there? Because
God, I'd put the women that you're trying to reach, I'd put these women in front of them because that's
Hold
where
on.
they want. I mean, I would.
Yeah. But see, first of all, a woman is not going to give herself much. She's her own worst critic. So you have to get them outside of that world of being their own worst critic, because how can you lead someone and you do not have, respect for yourself? It's very difficult. So you have
Is
to
this specific to women in your opinion, or
I don't
women
know
and
much.
men?
I've never tried to have an in-depth relationship with man, so I have no idea. And I don't mean. Yeah.
All right, 50
yeah.
jokes just went through my head. I'm gonna try and
Me
keep this
too.
thing on the level.
But
I'll share them next door.
but
To men, yes.
well, see, the thing is that women are very special. They raise us. No matter what happens in life, these are the ones who normally take care of us. So all of us men, I don't care what we do in life, everything we do is trying to impress her. So why am I going to try to figure out through, with other men what's going on in life when we're all trying to go down the same path and understand her? So this has been my life mission, trying to figure out how she thinks. What does she like? Because if I can get that, I can solve a lot of things in this world, because every law we make, every job, whatever it is, it's all around her, and we're drugging her up. We're creating this monster out of her. She doesn't know whether to, if she's happy or not. Why am I staying in this relationship? Why, they rule the world. But anyway, this young lady here, when she put her life about drugs online, people would come to her and basically say, "Oh my God, thank you, thank you, thank you." That was the first drug that was
good
the
way to look at it. I'm with you.
That was the first drug that really gave her the high that she's
euphoria?
always looking for. Is
The validation.
the validation, but real validation.
Worth.
A person that she doesn't even know comes up and cries to her and says, "Oh my God, you've just helped me." That's what she's been looking for.
See, that's
all
where
along.
I believe, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on something you'd said earlier, which is that. Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing with this. But what you said is that you went to all these clinics and they said you need to fall in love with you basically need to take care of yourself. Essentially, that was one of the two cornerstones to recovery is love yourself, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe I miss, you have to be strong enough to follow your own heart and make that decision based on how you feel, what's good for you, and not what others think you should do. That's basically what fall in love with yourself is, to be, own the decisions that you make in your life.
God, okay.
Don't look out for others to kind of lead you in that direction.
Because I will say that understood now. We actually had a show where we were talking about fulfillment in life and true happiness and purpose. Like, what is our purpose? Because, like I said, we wear it on our sleeves here. And there was a point in my life not long ago where I was suicidal. But by all standards, you would think, wow, this is a successful guy. He made it. But I was dead inside. And the one thing I have found that is a cure for that is helping. Like, when you actually focus outside and help others, you don't even have time to even worry about your own problem. And you'd be amazed. I think you're finding that. I found it with 9/11 is the number of people that have your issue, but they don't know where to go. And for the person that has the guts to come out and say that, because that takes guts to do that publicly. And I respect you for that. Same with, we would have to move into her room for her to be more public with us. I mean, her life's out there too, very public. That
You would
takes
think so
that takes
nowadays.
guts. Well, you reveal
I reveal
a lot. I
on
know.
purpose that makes you
helps,
think you
right?
know me. I used to reveal everything,
She
but
hides a lot.
I've learned to keep it back. I'm
She hides a
actually
lot.
very scared to talk
Yep.
these days.
Yep.
That's a whole.
Yeah.
We might be circling back to this. All right, so
See, the leggings. She has a pair of leggings on. This is a medical miracle in my eyes, because what it does is that when these doctors were telling us that, she has to get outside of her comfort zone, she has to be in love with her, putting her face on those leggings, walking in the street, something happened in my world that I never knew existed. Women from 21 to 38-ish, visceral reaction. She's a narcissist. What is she doing? That is wrong. They deemed her in a very negative light because, and I was like, well, wait a second. Why should it be bad for someone to love themselves? Why? Why are these women tearing each other up like this? So that was my first thing that I noticed. But then I also noticed from 38 and above, the women started becoming more embracive, to the situation. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. But they all say things like, it's good for her, but not me. Why not you? Why? Then I kind of tell them about the opioid thing, and then they're like, okay, I understand it, I like it, but still, I don't have a problem. I'm okay. I'm empowered. I'm a strong woman. I don't need this. And here we go, circling right back to, if you are empowered, why are you worried about what someone else would say? So we live in this world where people live in, they create this fictitious movie.
We all do it. We believe it ourselves. I mean,
you do. So my thing, putting her in those leggings and walking around, we've opened up. Now she has her own business. People come to her. We're the only people on planet Earth that make these.
Why don't you show? Can you do a little modeling for one of our cameras? Now, is that Vilma? Is that your picture?
Yeah, that's my face. That's his
No, she had purple hair back then, like you did at one time.
Yeah. So
I don't know if I see myself wearing those.
We make Pinocchio leggings for men.
No excuses around here, Dave. No excuse.
Those make me want to.
Right, right, right.
No, I got you. I'm limited on what I can laugh about publicly here. Like, I want to comment on the hair down the inside of her legs, but I can't because God has a handcuff on my wrist. I won't say it.
Yeah. But what these have done.
Very cool, though. Very cool.
People come to her. She can't take 5 steps. People come to her and like, oh my God, what is this? So now we, supplement companies, hair salons, in Mandalay Bay hotels.
Now, is this your business that you?
Yeah.
So they get an image, and you guys just can get it onto.
They're called wraps. Instead of wrapping a bus or a taxi cab.
Got it.
This all came from an opioid addiction world. Because, the glass can be half empty or half full. I don't care. Get a bigger glass. I don't care, But this has helped her turn her addiction and her issues to something very, very positive. So what we're doing is what, this young lady and I were talking about is what could she do? So basically what I'm going to do to get her out of her circle that she's in, because addiction comes in all forms, is to get her into this world, get her a actual outfit that looks good, designed for her with her face on there, and watch how her world changes. This is like an experiment for me, because now instead of those people who try to control her in her life, she's going to see that this is going to attract a totally different type of mindset in her life by bringing people who are more genuine, who are looking up to her. I'm talking about this one over here, And this is where we circle back from 2.5 years ago when we first had that conversation till her calling me back up about a month ago saying, Chuck, what you told me back then, I see it. Let's do something. And I don't know where her story is on the other part, but I know there is, if her addiction is bad people in her life, I understand it and I know the way out.
That's on savior.
I just made a status yesterday saying that if you're very sick and you ask the universe, like it'll send you people that are trying to heal you.
No, I would just substitute the word universe
of
for
course
God.
You would.
But
and
it
first
all makes
I
sense.
wrote God, and then I had to stay true to myself, and I was like, you know what, I can't quite say that yet.
When you are really there, you will actually, because I used to write the universe, and then at 42 this whole thing happened, and now it would on the inside it would bother me to write because I actually
I was the opposite.
No,
I
so
wrote
was I.
God, and it was bothersome that I wrote
no,
God.
that's good.
Because I mean, most
'Cause
people
when you
that's
do
a
it-
simpler way for them to understand, but I don't translate that way. So
When you find a good man, he becomes your God.
I mean, I understand that. I understand that, and
You
so.
got that one too, right?
But that's a whole nother kind of worship, and and like whatnot. And so, for this subject, I was talking about, the world sent me Savior in my life. Not just in the form of Chuck, but I'm thankful for him. A lot of random people have been sent to me these days, and I don't have like a lot of people, but it's enough to have like a family.
Do you feel like you're at a
family.
crossroads?
Yeah, and it's not
I see it.
easy. It's
What does
very
it
hard.
mean?
I do.
Yeah, I've heard
I
the
almost
same.
feel like your old
Going
life.
to another world.
I think Chuck and I might represent your potential future, and one I think that
Yeah.
would be bright.
Feel
But-
like I'm literally being like fought over right now. It's just not. I'm struggling mentally about it. I don't know what I'm going through right now.
Young lady, what do you mean by fought over? Can you kind of take your time? Fought over. Is it really us, or is it really
No.
inside your head?
No, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so tired from trying to do the things that I've wanted to do and being beaten down and used so long that it's like, do I really want to do it anymore? Do I have it still in me? Do I still have the energy to do this? I did at one point and I can't stop. It's not like I can just give up, but a part of me almost wanted to be able to, just because it's so exhausting.
No, I know. I get it.
You know?
Fatigue
So I feel
makes
like when you
cowards of
finally-
everybody.
You finally kind of get that opportunity.
And you're scared of that opportunity. Can I read you for a little bit?
Yes.
Can I read you for a little bit?
Yeah.
I talk to 30 women a day.
Say that again?
30 women a day.
Okay.
A day. And they're usually these conversations. And they don't veer that far from, what she's going through. When, she will self-sabotage her whole life because she's afraid of rejection. So she will be the first one to try to tear it down because she doesn't want anyone else to be first in that line. Okay? So
Men can do that too. At least
men can do that too, but we're talking about her right now because she came to me for a reason. She was hurt. And most women come to me for a reason because they're hurt. And they see some feel-good stuff. They see all these women on my Facebook page. Oh, my God, I want to be the one on the back of the convertible waving and stuff like this. They see something there. And before, she didn't really fit in. Now she fits in. I'm saying, okay, open arms. Come on in. She's scared. She's scared. She runs from me. This one right here, she runs from me because I don't think she feels she actually deserves what I'm telling her that exists out here. And I'm trying to slowly convince her, just give it a little time. Just hang out for a minute.
surround yourself with people that seek.
If I can get
if you keep hearing that,
yeah.
you'll believe it. Did you hear the opposite growing up?
Absolutely. And now, I've proved myself beyond that, but now that I do finally have an opportunity, I'm so scared of messing it up.
Yes.
And I'm
I
so
see that.
scared that my health is so bad that like even though I want it and like I have it in me, and like I'm talented enough and like I have the drive that I like physically can't do it anymore.
All right. Well, you've got
And that part kills
God.
me.
You need to do something, my friend.
That's the
He's
part
already
that
in your
kills
life.
me. Because
I was there when
I
met him.
have everything that I could have asked for an opportunity, and now I'm scared that I can't deliver. And that's the only part that I ever had before was myself. So,
But that's isn't that a pretty natural reaction? That fear.
That is a pretty natural reaction because, and I see it more with women who are beautiful than not, because a beautiful woman really doesn't have a lot of experience, being proactive to anything. They've been used to being, saying no. everyone is always handing them things. Everyone is always giving them, or wanting to be with them. And they live in this world that everything is going to be given to them. But then when they get to the point where they don't want it anymore, they don't have a lot of decision-making process skills. So now that goes outside of what they're accustomed to, and they find themselves isolated because they don't have the tools necessary. If I can just get this young lady outside of her antecedents, her current situation, just for a little bit, to get her to feel some real stuff, because everything in her life is fake. Every man that's been in her life has been fake. Every friend that she's had has been fake, So here comes something that she thinks is real. Oh, that has to be fake as well.
It has to be too good.
It has to be too good. So basically what we're trying to do, I have a group of women that I work with all over the United States. And we have this huge project with, have you heard of Harry Belafonte?
Sure.
We have this huge project with his daughter-in-law, which she does a lot with women's empowerment, a lot with the drug world as well. And Vilma has become a good script writer. And so our script our little narrative that we have going on starts with a little girl being told, hey, don't do that. Don't play like a little girl. Dress like a little girl. You need to play with dolls. Play with white dolls. Play with black dolls. Don't wrestle with the boys. They get older towards dating age. Nope. You don't date that type of person. Don't bring this person. If you bring this person home, and then they become 18, they leave home with no decision-making skills whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the stick. And then the carrot is everything you see in fashion magazines, on television, painting the picture of the fantasy, which you try to photograph, which doesn't really exist.
It doesn't exist.
We make it real because it's in our heads, and we want to be victors in the world, and we define the world by the little window that we look at the world. It used to be a real window in a real house.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's through this thing. And I'm telling you, the same dynamics apply. If I'm looking out the window of my house, I can see some trees and some waters and some mountains maybe. Well, not around here, but you get the picture. But I won't see cliffs. I won't see canyons. I won't see ice sheets. I won't see oceans. We don't see much of the world because we think we're seeing the whole world through here, and there's a lot more going on, like this opioid crisis, which to me this is a macro. This is a serious problem. Add it to another one of, in my opinion, the devil's offensive tactics to ultimately just completely wipe out humanity, which is his goal. So,
Whose goal? I'm sorry.
Satan's. I've just come to.
Oh,
I recognize. I believe. I mean, I feel. Like I said, I wouldn't renounce this even to death, but I believe that there's absolutely a spiritual world, and I agree with everything Chuck's saying, and might even go a step further to go that this might not just be a battle inside of your own head. You said you feel like you're being fought over, which is so interesting because...
Yeah, I didn't quite get that.
I think I'm going to...
Like my old life and my new life, like I feel like it's it's a battle. Like
you fought not within yourself. You have two characters in your head battling.
Yeah, I have even more than two.
Oh, she's got 8.
Yeah, I got more than 2.
Today.
I got at least 3.
And I would paraphrase that because I've just come, and you can prove this scientifically. I'm not going to be able to do it on this show. But there is a spirit world. They do interact with us. And I don't know if you remember, but this show started off with 10 people 13 weeks ago. I mean, we're on our 14th episode, so we're brand new. And I sat down with a couple of people that weren't believers yet at the time, and I recorded this back when everything was good. And I said, look, there's going to be trouble, and it's going to happen. It is what happens in a spiritual war when you start hearing about things like God, the Bible, and Jesus. If you've got dark spirits around you, they're not going to they're going to try and get you away from us. And it'll happen in the form of, it can happen in a variety of different ways. But I think that battle you're talking about, Sid, it's actually more real than any of us could really think. But I literally picture spirits from, dark ones and light ones, literally, they're throwing dice to see who is going to end up with your.
I've seen this picture, and I felt like it depicted how I felt at the time, and it was just really perfect. How we refer to the game of life as chess, and it's not checkers. Everybody thinks it's so simple. They just don't even think twice about their moves. But I seen this picture where it's one side's white and one side's black, or whatever, good and evil or whatever, and it's visibly light and dark, but it's a chessboard, and it's we're the pieces, and it's that's what it is. That's kind of what I felt like when I've been going through this journey to find myself, or whatever you want to say.
And you're still so young.
I am.
I mean, when do people find themselves, if ever? What age?
31.
30. Oh, it's
Charles
Charles
Not for
Mingo,
women.
31 years old. We can add that to the facts
For
of the
men,
show.
Yeah. Maybe. Older.
I did. I
They
have.
think they find themselves.
I think because I think the same empowerment thing happens where I found myself, I'm complete, I'm whole, I am woman, but it's more, it's a self.
Let's say the party stops at 31.
I don't think there's an age. It's what you've been through, and I don't know.
If you want to generalize it, from my opinion, I have these retreats. I have women's retreats where I have up to 28 women come from all around the world, and they all talk. In these events, a lot of women basically say that they've never been around women before that they can really talk to. They say things to me that they have never said with anyone else before, because I understand what that shiny object is, what they're looking for. So they come to me thinking they're waiting for a miracle. So they open themselves up, and they're like, okay, and they tell me things that are just crazy. But 40 is probably the age, because for women anyway, they've raised the kids, they're gone. They have the money, they have the husband, they have the white picket fence, they have everything that they thought was going to make them happy under their belt at this point. And none of that stuff has made them happy. So now what happens is they have to start looking at reality. And not until they start looking at reality is the first day that they start thinking, okay, being real feels a lot better than all this fake stuff that I've been doing in the past. 40 is about the age.
And you know what's funny? Okay, so I did that and got that all out of my system really early. I was with the same guy from 14 to 19. I had a house that I fully furnished for a year before I even moved in at the age of 19 years old, because I was expecting a baby. And I literally played house, quote unquote, and realized that I completely settled, and I did it just to say that I did it. And then I started backwards from there. I'm in hindsight, I'm looking back at this, and that's the only way I can kind of explain it. Everybody looked at me like I was completely crazy. What do you mean you're just going to settle down? You're 19 years old. What is it? But that's why at 28 years old now, I can sit here with all this wisdom, if that's what you want to call it, quote unquote. But it's really life experience, where I did that fake stuff for the past 10 years, at least 10 plus.
To discover it that young, that's a win.
Yeah, I got the shock out of my system, but I lost my whole family doing it. But hey, you wake up one day and you don't have a family, you figure out how to live life on your own real quick with the phone in your hand and the clothes on your back.
That's why she's Sid Vicious. Where's the camera?
That's
Whatever.
where it kind of, I guess so. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a little
Well,
bit of my
when I listened to
history.
you speak on, the talk show that caught my attention, which you must have recorded a few years ago, and you were talking about the issues we talk about here, and I just remember thinking, all right, this girl's got a powerful message, and it's sort of weird, who knows what really motivates us? I'm trying to open myself up to what is above, because I know, communication does happen between us and heaven in some way. So, and I don't know why particular people stick out, but for whatever reason, you had made an impression on me, which, led to a phone call a year plus ago. And through almost a series of accidents, Kelly Jean's on the show, then you come on the show, and then we're sort of reunited after it never.
I feel like people are given influence in this life for a reason, and so that's why we catch people's attention. I mean, some people are influential and some people aren't. Let's just be honest. Some people are forgettable. It's not that they don't have a purpose in this life, but it might not be to catch, it's like whatever. It's like their potential is somewhere else in life, but I feel like, we're given roles and it's our responsibility to recognize that as something self-beneficial, or if we're going to use that to serve. And I might not believe in a particular God or the same one that you do, but I know that my role is to serve, and it's not to serve myself, because I've done that and I'm miserable and I'm crawling from the gutters doing that,
Well, you're written about in the Bible. You've got God's heart. He wrote his laws and his heart on yours. People that, I think you were in a relationship with someone who didn't want to serve anyone but himself. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay. That to me is what evil is. I was in a relationship like that as well. That to me is the definition of evil. It's a level of selfishness. And Chuck said something that's very true, because people think the opposite of love is hate, but it's not. Hate actually is on the side of the equation of love. What is at the top of the opposite of love is fear, and that is what the dark spiritual world ultimately, and it's what it is, the dividing line between us, that getting over that fear of, because you're heading into new territory, but I think you're going to have Vilma's experience, because do you know how many people are going to be looking to you for answers?
Yep.
And don't let that put more pressure on you, because you still got to take care of yourself, obviously. But dude, I think you are about to help millions of people. And that your self-worth is going to be on a whole different frickin' stratosphere. Absolutely. And from that, all the rewards, whether financial, emotional, relational, whatever, they will come from that.
Yeah.
But that's what I see happening.
Well, that's the only thing that's kept me going. I mean, and just on a smaller level, when I have been able to do it, I do it. And that's, I don't know, out of the woodworks, those are where the good people come from. It's not the people that I market my photos to. It's the people that have seen, my activism, my humanitarianism.
That is actually, because look, Chuck understands something about the world. People like to be around pretty people, all right? It's a thing. Everyone does. Guys, girls, whatever. And there's something that happened, everything in my life changed, because through the age of 42, I wanted to be in the quote-unquote the popular group. And I was good at being in that group. And I used to look at people that went, activists as just wackos. Just come on, man. What are you doing here? Never really thought twice about it. But I'll tell you this now. I would rather go get my friends out of an activist rally than any other way, because the kind of person that's there is someone that is selfless. They're there for the good of others, not for themselves. That is, I think, one of the most critical components of a successful human, which a lot of us just seem to lack for some reason. You don't. You've got a good heart and charisma.
Thank you.
So actually, all you guys do.
Thank you.
And so do you,
Feel
sir.
the same way.
All right. Let's have a group hug.
Yeah.
All right, let's get. All right.
Bring it on in.
Do we want to take a look? What time we got, Jimmy? Okay, we'll just power through then. So you two? So this story, when Vilma came to you, what year are we talking about when this happened?
That was 3 years ago. So it was about 16.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask you guys personal questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. You can always refuse to answer.
Anything goes.
Anything goes.
You do not let them leave without answering these questions. Okay. Are you two romantic? Are you dating right now?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
She more so than I am.
What, dating?
Well, you take control. Of
I
the
mean, with
relationship
each
whether-
other,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
That's my
she's
hobby.
dating everyone. You guys are married
No,
now?
yeah.
Oh, so then you are in fact dating. Then
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
Every
That's
day
my
we're on
humor.
the road all the time.
Got you.
Oh, you really twisted that one up.
No. All right. So, how long did it?
You mean messed it up?
No,
You think he
twisted.
messed it up for himself?
No, he just twisted.
No, Charles. He's trying to get me into a twist.
Yes,
Not. He's gonna have to get up a little earlier. So, from the time you're picking her up at 7 a.m., the next day from the hospital
Mm-hmm.
to falling in love and getting. Tell us a little bit about that process. When did the romantic part begin versus the getting clean part? Is there crossover? Do you have to have
30
one?
days before I met her, I fell in love with who she was as a human being without even seeing her. Because here's what I speak to 30 women a day. So what that means is that I'm looking for something in women that really, pleases me. I like reality. So a woman who says, if I ask a woman, hey, how are you? And she says, I don't know. There's no way that I can start a relationship with someone who can't even communicate or figure out themselves. So if an individual does not know themselves or has a issue with expressing themselves, how can I start a relationship with someone who is not even comfortable enough to have a conversation? So that's a non-starter for me. That's why I stayed single for 2 years. I get on the phone with this young lady, 30 days into it. She doesn't care about what she says. That's sexy, I thought. Everything that I asked her, she had an answer and then some. And she didn't hold any punches. I'm like, wow, this is very different. And mind you, I speak to 30 women a day. She was an anomaly. She was an outlier at this point. So I fell in love with who she was without even having anything physical. So this was cerebral. This was mental at this point. So now she comes into my life and she's an addict. So I'm like, oh my God. So basically, to make a long story short, she came to me to die.
I was 90 pounds. I was ready.
She was
to
90
die.
pounds.
I had lost everything.
Was that a conscious thought on your part, Vilma? Like, did you really believe I'm at the end of my life, I'm just going to shrivel up at
I
Charles'
was suicidal many times, but yeah, that was it. I would wake up every morning and I would cry because I woke up. I was miserable. My mother was killed in a plane crash on the way from a vacation in a private plane. And I was miserable. I had a son. He dropped out of school. I could care less. It was just I had lost everything. It wasn't for him. I would not be here today. Yeah.
Okay.
I had nobody else in my life, and I didn't care enough about my life or myself to do anything about
This
it.
is an unbelievable story. Like, this is like you make movies out of stories like this. This is just
We're
unbelievable.
trying. We have. Actually, I don't know if we can say this, but we had a 26 episode show called
Opioids and Dreams, right?
Now we're going that they're going to start rerunning that now, and now we're creating something new with better information, better equipment, more information. But to get back to the relationship thing, this woman came. Her day one, we sat on the couch at my new place. She looked at me and she said, "Babe, I don't know if I'm."
It's okay, go ahead.
Okay. We're going to need more Kleenex, I think.
No. This is funny.
Okay.
She does.
Oh,
She's
boy.
like, I don't know. I think I'm kind of bi. I don't know.
I hate men.
She hated men. She hated men's body parts. She hated the hair on men. She had everything
Hey,
about
more
men.
of a challenge. All right, I'm in. Okay.
So,
Just
but
kidding.
2 weeks later, I'm like, okay.
He says, how about that threesome,
let's
babe?
revisit. I didn't say it like that. I said, let's revisit your mindset. It's,
No.
because she attracted certain people in her life that were takers. No one really cared about what she felt. And this has been all her life, to her broken back, to everything. And I seen that in her, so I understood what to ask her. I kind of knew more about her than she did herself. I knew what she was looking at. That sounds arrogant, sounds conceited, but I did.
It's almost like profiling someone, though. Like you could profile.
I
Yeah, I understand.
profiled her, and in the beginning, she's like,
By the way, guys, let me know when we have 3 minutes. Sorry, go ahead.
no, but basically, our romantic relationship started here and not physical first, over
And
the
that
phone.
was the first for me.
And that was the first for her.
That's the only way that I think that works.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it doesn't
I
happen
don't.
today. It doesn't happen today.
Usually not.
We get caught up in the physical thing so much, and then we start making decisions. I have this. Well, I can talk forever. I have this one thing that I ask women: who are you? They will tell me their job. They will tell me what their name is, what their parents gave them. They will tell me all these things that have absolutely nothing to do with them. I'm like, how can you find a mate in your life and you don't know who the hell you are? And then
It's not an easy question to answer.
It is.
Who are you? How do you
I'm an
answer that?
individual who's very sensitive and have low self-esteem. In order for me to function in life, I need to overcome that, have other people come in my world to actually come to me in a very real way. And if I can create
Is
that,
this pre-written somewhere? Because
No,
this is
sir.
just coming out too. Okay.
He wakes up in the middle of the night, and I mean, I need coffee to function. He wakes up, he takes the phone, and he gets on about business. He's like, it's like, did you sleep? Did your mom go
I
to sleep?
have low self-esteem.
So he tries to overcompensate.
3 minutes, okay. One last question.
Sure, sir.
Are all addictions bad, or is it a matter of taking an addictive personality and getting them addicted to something that is of value? Like, do we get her addicted to work or addicted to helping people?
Get addicted to themselves, loving themselves. That addiction is probably the best one that will help. If they become addicted to themselves and doing things positive and getting good results out of that addiction, I think flipping that, because there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to make that person lose that addiction. You just have to take it and reroute it in another direction that grants a positive result.
True. Very true.
Okay, so I want to leave us with 2 quotes. We normally do this in a different order, but I want to tie this to the fact that this is an Ephesians 5:11 operation, because the drug epidemic going on in the United States, it's not random. It is actually being purposefully fueled, and a little bit of research I'm sure this is not news to you. And it does start with heavy duty. Actually, it begins even above pharmaceutical companies. It begins with what I believe is organized evil on this planet. I'm going to give you 2 quotes. One is from Aldous Huxley in 1962, and then we're going to do one of Zbigniew Brzezinski, someone you might know, Polish-American diplomat. So Aldous Huxley, he is the grandson of T.J. Huxley, who was known as Darwin's bulldog. We probably do not have the theory of evolution as famous as it is today without the Huxley family. They led this coordinated campaign to have the world accept evolution around 1860. In my opinion, the Huxley family would be one of those generational families that we talk about here that their souls have been lost a long time ago. So he was at Cal Berkeley, and this was a live speech. And I'm going to give you 2 quotes that I think back up what's going on with the opioid crisis today. First was from Aldous Huxley. Now, he's the guy that wrote Brave New World, which is really the new world order that we seem to be being led into. And his quote was this, 1962. "We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, the Illuminati, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people to love their servitude. This seems to me the ultimate and malevolent revolution." Now, that's all playing on what you said. This is about what is going on in our minds, and they are, whether voluntary, through vaccines, or through meds, there's a lot of bad stuff that's getting in here.
That's Mika's father.
I know, yeah, I remember.
Okay, so you know the man.
Yes.
Brzezinski, 1970. Now, he died last year, I think.
Yep.
Another person that I would say is probably intertwined with the dark forces of this world, if they are there, but let's just indulge me. Here's the quote, 1970. "Speaking of a future at most only decades away," we're here, "an experimenter in intelligence control asserted, 'I foresee a time when we shall have the means and therefore, inevitably, the temptation to manipulate the behavior and intellectual functioning of all people through environmental and biochemical manipulation of the brain,'" which is exactly what we're seeing with fentanyl. And when you look at what on screen right now, everyone knows people that have died of heroin overdoses. Okay, look how much you need of fentanyl to kill you. And if you're talking about carfentanil, which I think is some amped up version of it, yes, I mean it's microscopic, which makes sense.
That's why it works so good on diluting the street drugs for them, because they make so much money with it. They need so little.
All right, give us the name of your business so people can find your leggings and your show, and then I'm going to do a 20-second closeout and we're out of here.
Leggingraps.com.
Legging Wraps, WRAPS.
Yes.
And legging has 2 G's, people. Leggingraps.com. Anything else? We're gonna promote this on our website and stuff. You guys, thank you for coming in.
so
You're
much.
actually our first official real guests. I mean, we obviously have many, but
Oh my
like
goodness.
on
Tell me
air.
something else.
Well, we've have lots of people that come, but you're the first one. We rerouted a show to specifically talk about this, and I'm so thankful you guys came here
Thank you
I
for
for our
Appreciate
listeners
having us.
and on her behalf. Good
It was
people
really,
to
really
have
nice.
in your
No, I
corner.
was very excited.
At the end of the day, guys, we're not here to glorify what's evil. There is a way out of this mess. Find out who Jesus Christ is. He actually is the solution to a lot of these problems. We will see you guys next Thursday. We broadcast this Wednesday. Sound good? All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
See you next week.
Great show.